Hi, everybody. This is Jonathan Leiss. My wife Megan and I own Springforth Farm, which is in Hurdle Mills, North Carolina. That's about half an hour north of Durham. It's a micro farm. We sell cut flowers through two wholesalers that sell to florists. So we only sell wholesale. We only sell flowers through the end of May. Of course, when we start depends on the year. So actually, we've already been selling for a week. That's 2 to 4 weeks earlier than normal. And we grow all our annuals in tunnels. We have a 30 by 96 unheated hoop house and three 16 by 80 caterpillar tunnels from Farmer's Friend. So that's a little bit about our business. Maybe I'll repeat some of that as people are just getting on. Anyway, on top of our farm, we also are the instructors for a course from the Gardener's Workshop called the No-Till Microscale Flower Farm. It's an on-demand course, so you can take it anytime that you want. And the course is exactly what the title says. So we have one section on our no-till methods, because we don't use a tiller anywhere on the farm. We farm in permanent raised beds. We turn them around with hand tools. I see someone put a question in the question mark at the bottom. If you do have a question, please click that little question mark button instead of adding it as a comment. That's the easiest way I hear to do this. This is my first time using Instagram Live, so have a little patience if it's needed. We have the no-till section, then we have a micro scale section. So like I said, we are a very micro farm. We have those 4 tunnels that have a total of 20 raised beds in them where we grow all of our annuals. We stopped growing annuals in the field because we just wanted to focus on the very early spring production, and so growing in tunnels allows us to get that early spring flowers. We do have some perennials in the field that bloom early. So we talk about some of the considerations for setting up a micro scale farm. We feel really strongly that it's important to include very small micro farms in the flower farming movement. It could even be as small as a few raised beds in your yard in an urban environment, which is just the way that we get more flowers to more people and build the momentum for local flowers. But that if you have that small micro farm, you farm professionally just as well as someone that's doing it on a larger scale. So we have a section about that. And then we have a section just talking more about flowers. So if you have questions about anything about our farm or anything about our course, please put them in the question box at the bottom. I see 4 questions, so I'm going to get right on to that. All right, so the first question, I'm having a hard time starting Dara indoors on soil blocks raised up off heat mat with a cookie sheet. I'm sorry, we can't help you with that. We have only ever direct seeded it. So all of those crops that are in the carrot family, Dara, Ami, Magus, Ami Visnaga, Buplurum, and Orlia, we only direct seed. So I'm afraid I can't help you with starting those in soil blocks. Okay, so let's see here. Sorry, I can't help you with growing the Dara. Okay, someone else says, I'm trying to germinate campanula for the first time and I'm having trouble. Do you have any tips? There was that picture of me with the campanula that I put on. We seed campanula. We only grow the champion series of the campanula medium. We put it on soil blocks, on a heat mat. I'm sorry, I'd have to look up the temperature, but I don't know how to do that because I'm using my phone for Instagram. We cover it lightly, very lightly with vermiculite. And we don't have great germination, so it's one that we overseed on. I think we also don't have great germination with it. It's very hard. We've considered just buying plugs before because of that. So my advice would be overseed, put it on a heat mat, look up the germination temperature for it, and we cover it very lightly with vermiculite and then put a humidity dome on top of it until it germinates. Do we grow anything in a heated greenhouse in the winter? We don't have a heated greenhouse, so no. We only grow in unheated caterpillar tunnels. We're in zone 7. And so, like I said, this year is early. Our anemones, we sold our first anemones last week. We harvested 20 bunches of stock already. We're starting to get ranunculus. So everything is very early, just with the heat from the sun. How much water and fertilize for your sunflowers? We pretty much do everything the same. We had a soil test that worked with a soil scientist or a agronomist consultant, Ellen Polishuk. Her business is, I think, called Plant to Profit. We did soil tests, and she advised us what fertility to put down as far as P and K and micronutrients, and then actually she gave us advice based on our conversations for our nitrogen as well. So we just work with someone to help us figure it out because we don't know. You could always be very general and just follow the instructions on the sunflower packet and the fertility packet. A great resource for all of that. Megan's off to pick up the girls from their kindergarten, so just waving by. A great resource for that is a book that's published by the Association of Specialty Cut Flower Growers called Specialty Cut Flowers, which has information on fertility needs for everything that you have. How much you water depends a lot on your soil and the weather. So if you think they need more water, just we would recommend watering them more. Hey, do you use shade cloth? Okay, we just put shade cloth on. We bought shade cloth this year for the very first time and put it on 2 of our tunnels yesterday. The purpose is to keep the soil cool so that our anemones and ranunculus bloom longer. We're hoping to get 1 to 2 more weeks of blooms or taller blooms at the end of the season because those are big cash crops for us. We don't know if it'll work. So it's an experiment. We've never used shade cloth before. We just put it on. Our cue was when we thought there would be no significant snow for the rest of the year because we're really trying to keep the tunnels cooler. I think it would depend on what you were doing, with it. I would think that other farmers in your area might be able to help you with that if you have a community about that. Leaves on Delphinium, Belladonna, Veronica, and Scoop Stadiosa, all under row cover, died. Back all the way. Do you think they're... I have to say we don't grow any of those, so I don't have direct experience. I would dig around where the plants are and see if I would take out a couple plants, pull them out and look at the roots. And if the roots look healthy, they'll probably grow back. If the roots don't look healthy, if they're rotten or something, pull them out and plant something else. When in doubt, that's what I do. Pull it up and look at the roots. I don't know if those were inside or out under a tunnel or outside. We are always worried about humidity, and we uncover things every chance we get. We try to never leave things covered in the day if we don't have to. Of course, sometimes you don't have that option. Good luck with that. That's definitely a challenge. How do you germinate? Okay. There's a typo there with wild thistle flowers. you may want to retype that. How do you germinate? If you were trying to say Crespidia, we've never grown it before, so I don't know, but we're thinking about growing it next year, so hopefully it's not that hard to germinate. We like things that are easy. Okay, Simple Farm Bloom says, what is your most profitable crop, a variety that is must grow in your opinion? Okay, that's easy. Our two most profitable crops are anemones, and the white anemones in particular are the most profitable. You can only grow them in most of the country if you have a tunnel of some sort. So if you are trying to grow them in the field, do some experimenting. You're going to have to create a plastic tunnel to stop the ground from freezing, but you're going to have to vent them so they don't get diseases. Anemones are by far our most profitable. The next one would be snapdragons. Actually, it's right up there with anemones. Our overwintered snapdragons in a tunnel produce 6 to 8 stems each. We grow them sometimes 6 inches apart, sometimes 8 inches apart, and they're incredibly profitable. And then the other one I think would be the digitalis, the foxglove, is also very, very profitable for us. So is Orlia. Some years Dianthus is, some years it isn't. The demand for that from Florist seems to be quite inconsistent, so that just depends on the year. Varieties. Okay, our all-time favorite snapdragons are the Madden Butterfly series, specifically Madden Butterfly Bronze. However, in a tunnel, and this may not work as well in the field, but in a tunnel, you can really extend your harvest by planting different series. So in the group 1 and 2 snapdragons, we plant Chantilly and Costa Silver and Costa Apricot. We like those a lot, especially I like the Chantilly white. We grow the Madden Butterfly, which blooms after the Chantilly, and then after that we grow Potomac, Rocket, and Maryland, which bloom after the Madden Butterfly, and we get a very long snapdragon harvest. This year we're experimenting with unpinched spring snaps. That's new, so we don't know. I don't have anything to report on that yet, but we'll see how it goes. We hope they'll be blooming on Mother's Day. Most of our other snaps are done by Mother's Day. All right. When growing ranunculus and anemones, do you have a weed mat down, or does that make them get too hot? Good question. Dave Dowling, who I recommend doing everything Dave says not to put down black plastic. However, we do have black landscape fabric on our ranunculus because otherwise we just can't keep on top of the weeds. Anemones, the way they grow is not compatible with any sort of plastic. They just send up shoots all over the place, and most of them will be under the plastic if you're trying to use plastic. Butterfly ranunculus, we also don't use plastic landscape fabric because the plants are just the way the plants grow. But for all the regular ranunculus, we put them in landscape fabric. The shade cloth that I just mentioned earlier is to try and reduce the heat. We'll see how it goes. We just find that we need it for the bed. Okay, Sandhill Bloomers. I took your class 2 years ago and learned tons. Thank you for the endorsement. We're glad you liked it. Do you buy new ranunculus or do you save them? Okay, we've done both. If you go on Growing for Market magazine, we wrote a series of articles a couple years ago about how we save our ranunculus. And if you are signed up for the Gardener's Workshop Growing in High Tunnels class, then Gretel and Steve Adams talk about how they save ranunculus in that class. So we do save it. This year we're dealing with some soil-borne diseases that's not related to saving the ranunculus in the past. However, because of that, we're not going to save any this year. Once we feel like we have a handle on those diseases, we might start saving them again. All right. Good morning. This is my first year growing ranunculus. I have some growing in 6-inch pots. How cold can they handle? Temps in the mid-40s in the day and highs in the 20s to 35 at night. I've never grown them in pots before. That it's probably not too small because we grow ours 6 inches apart, so a 6-inch pot would seem like it's fine. But I can't say for sure. They can take it quite cold. The roots can take it quite cold as long as the soil doesn't freeze. If they're under any sort of protection in the mid-20s, I would think that would be perfectly adequate. Just make sure the soil doesn't freeze. In our tunnel, because our tunnel's unheated, it's gotten down to 5 degrees before, and the ranunculus has all been fine. The leaves froze completely solid. I went out there and tapped on them. Tap, tap, tap. Oh, trying to show with my finger. Tap, tap, tap. They were completely frozen solid, but the ground wasn't frozen at all. It thawed out, and it was fine the next day. We've had blossoms. It's been 25 outside in the closed tunnel, and the blossoms were fine uncovered. So they're cold hardy as long as, okay, which plants do you succession plant and when? Good question. Because we are only growing in the tunnels, trying to grow and stop selling at the end of May, we have very limited ability to succession plant. So we used to do more succession planting, but if things start blooming the 3rd week of May, that's too late for us, because if they bloom for 2 weeks, we don't sell the whole crop. This year, the only things we're succession planting are stock, Orlia, and snapdragons. And those snapdragons, we normally pinch our overwintered snapdragons. However, the spring snapdragons, we sowed 3 in a plug, and we're not pinching them. So that will make them bloom earlier. So those are the only things that we are succession planting this year. In the past, we've also succession planted Godesia, Bells of Ireland, and some other things, but they didn't bloom fast enough for us. Hi, do you mulch around your ranunculus and anemones? We do not. We don't do any mulching on those beds except for the black landscape fabric. Hi, just to know this event is pet friendly. Okay, not sure I understand that question. Do you use shade cloth? I think I already answered that question, so I don't. Okay. Like, this is just me being new to Instagram Live. So I answered all the questions. If you have anyone else has more questions, or if I didn't answer your question adequately, please put it in there. I just want to take a second, I guess, to tell you about our course for everyone who just joined. We have a course through the Gardener's Workshop called the No-Till Microscale Flower Farm. It's an on-demand course, meaning you can take it any time of the year and whenever is convenient for you. The first section is all about our no-till practices, why we like no-till, how you can use no-till, and why no-till is a great option for a micro-scale farm, especially a farm in an urban environment or where you don't want to spend money on equipment because you're so small. The second section is all about how to think about your micro-scale farm. We talk about farm layout, sales outlets, crops, things like that, tools you might need or tools you might want to avoid. And then we talk a little bit about flower farming and just how we handle flowers, what types of flowers we grow, how we sell flowers. If you take the class, there's also a student-only Facebook group that you can join afterwards. And I see a few more questions, so I'm going to okay. So first, the question about campanula. I saw your question. We have a hard time with it. I recommend sowing more of it, which is what we do. We've thought about buying plugs before because we find it to be frustrating. We sow it on top of the soil block, and then we cover it very lightly with fine vermiculite, put that on a heat mat at whatever the recommended temperature is, and then put a humidity dome on top of it. If you're using mini blocks, try a larger block would be my only advice. Just see if that works better for you. Can I sow Orlia, Dara, Larkspur successively in Zone 7? Yes, you can. I would recommend sowing those once in the fall and then again in very early spring in the field, like February, early February. and then they'll germinate when the temperature is ready, and way overseed them because the spring seeding is not going to have great germination, so seed it very heavily. It's not too late to do it now. They'll be shorter as it gets hotter, but it still is possible. Seeds that won't last long. I'm not sure what that means. Maybe seeds we don't save. We don't save any seed. We just buy new seed every year. It's not worth the risk of having bad germination. If you're having trouble with campanula that saved seeds, maybe try buying new seeds. Seeds that are pelleted, seeds in the carrot family, in the onion family, larkspur, those are all seeds that don't store well. Fedco Seed Company has a list of seeds and how long they can be stored under ideal conditions if you look on their website or in their catalog. Do you plant any crop in the same bed when ranunculus is done? We remove the ranunculus corms. Even if we save them, we remove them, clean them, and store them, and divide them. So you can definitely plant another crop after the ranunculus. Do you remember where you purchased your caterpillar tunnels? We got them from Farmer's Friend. That's the sort of main supplier now. I think Bootstrap Farmer also has some, but we got ours from Farmer's Friend. They are the Gothic Pro model, and that's what I would recommend if you're going to get them. I've read that Godesia likes low nutrients, poor soil. We do not alter our bed prep for Godesia beds. We basically prep everything the same way. It's too complicated for us to do it differently. Godesia blooms based on day length, and we found in the field for us it bloomed about 8 inches tall, but in the tunnel it blooms about 36 inches tall because it can grow more before the day length gets to what it's going to bloom at. So just keep in mind there's a day length factor. Do you incorporate nutrients into the soil for no-till? We spread nutrients on top of the soil, and then we rake it in, just scuff the soil with a rake to incorporate it. And then we usually spread compost on top of that, a thin layer just to get sort of the nutrients in the soil. Then it really helps if your soil is moist. The soil life will digest those amendments and make them available to other things. Favorite flowers and why? Okay, I love flowers that are not fussy, easy to grow, sell well, and so obviously that's not the longest list because it's like the golden goose right there. I love Orlia. I love snapdragons. Snapdragons do have thrips is the biggest problem we have with snapdragons. That might be the only problem we have with snapdragons, but thrips are, awful. So snapdragons we love, Orlia we love. Those are probably our favorites. I mean, we love all the flowers we grow, otherwise we don't grow them. So for foliage, I love 9-bark. So if you don't grow 9-bark, you should, and you can sell it quite early in the spring. Test it to make sure the foliage is hardy enough, but you don't need to wait till the fall to sell it. Is your first tunnel from an NRCS fund? Also, what company is it from? Okay, our hoop house is from Morgan County Seeds, and it is not from NRCS. We got a loan through our local chapter of Slow Money to build that. Our 3 caterpillar tunnels from Farmer's Friend, we did use an NRCS cost share to purchase them. NRCS cares how many square feet of tunnel you build. They do not care how many structures it is. So the fact that we built 3 structures was irrelevant to them. It was just about the square footage. As always, talk to your local NRCS agent because your rules may vary from state to state. What is your post-harvest handling storage routine for anemones? Thank you. Okay, we have a somewhat complicated post-harvest handling routine on our farm in that we do something different for every flower. For anemones, we cut them into water, plain water, and then we put them into a holding solution. And that's it. And then we put them in our cooler, which is at 34 to 36 degrees. So plain water, holding solution. We do not put them into anything that has chlorine in it. One time our anemones turned yellow. I have no idea if that was why, but we are superstitious, so we've never done it again. So we don't use the zinnia tabs on the anemones. They store really well if you pick them at the proper stage. So you want to pick them when they've opened 1 to 2 times, and the little stem between the flower and the collar of leaves is 1/4 to 1/2 inch long. I highly recommend picking them early in the morning when the flowers are closed so they don't get damaged. Do your ranunculus reproduce corms like dahlias? Ranunculus corms grow larger every year. If you save them, you can divide them and get more corms. Definitely, if you're growing a patented or plant-protected ranunculus like butterfly, you may owe a royalty if you do that, and I would recommend you go through the extra steps to pay that royalty, because that's how the plant breeders make money so they can give us more wonderful plants. How do you deal with thrips? Do you use any spray? If so, what? Thrips are awful. We spray, sometimes we spray Pyganic, not very effective. Sometimes we spray Mycontrol or Botanigard. Those are 2 different brands of the same product. That's more effective. The main thing we do for thrips is pick flowers early like Snapdragons, when none of the flowers are open, but the bottom ones are colored. Same thing for Digitalis. None of the flowers open, the bottom ones are colored. And that way we just have fewer thrips. So very difficult. I don't have a great solution for that. Is it possible to grow ranunculus in crates in a garage under grow lights successfully? What daylight length do they need? I have no idea. I'm sure it's possible. That sounds very expensive, though. The cost of electricity, I'm not sure, would justify that for the lights. So you have to do more research somewhere else on that one. All right. Did I answer all the questions? I think so. Whoops, there's another question. What do you buy as plugs, if any? Yes, this year we did not buy any plugs except for Digitalis, which we had a complete crop failure on the Digitalis germinating, so we bought plugs for that at the last minute. As a result, we didn't get to choose the varieties we wanted as much. Next year, I think we're planning on traveling in January, so we won't be able to start our spring successions of stock and Snapdragons, so we'll have to buy those as plugs. And Digitalis and Campanula are things we've considered buying as plugs in the past because we don't have great germination on them, but so far we've just haven't done that yet. All right. For any germination questions, my recommendation would be to go to the Gardener's Workshop. They have great resources, or like I said, consult the book Specialty Cut Flowers from the Association of Specialty Cut Flower Growers. Okay, just the last couple questions, and then we're going to wrap up. Thank you very much. I'm glad that you found this to be helpful. Should your grow room be a constant temperature, and what humidity level should be reached? I think it is helpful if your grow room is a constant temperature of 70 to 75. Humidity, I have no idea about that. We have to heat ours and cool ours depending on the weather outside because lights make quite a lot of heat. Have you ever had any issues saving your ranunculus corms? A few farmers mentioned treating them before replanting them because of disease. We haven't had any issues saving them. So no, I think they're fine to save. They need to be very dry when they go into storage, stored in a mesh or paper bag in a warm environment. And then when you, before you plant them, we treat all our ranunculus before we plant it, whether we saved it or bought it, with root shield. So I would do that whether I save the corms or not. Do you soil block? We have soil blocked. We're moving to plug trays because we find we want to move the plugs outside and then the soil blocks just dry out too much for us. So we bottom water everything, and I would recommend just trying a bunch of different things to see what works for you. Yeah. So thank you very much, everybody. Like I said, our farm is Springforth Farm. We're not very active on social media, but you can find us on Facebook or Instagram, Springforth Farm NC. That's FORTH, and then at the end, NC as in North Carolina. And our course is the No-Till Microscale Flower Farm, available on demand from the Gardener's Workshop. And I'd love to connect with you. If you have any follow-up questions, you can always post them as a comment to one of our Instagram photos or something, and just tag me. I may miss it, depending on how busy we are right then and what our daughters are doing. But I'd love to help you any way you can. Thanks for joining us and all the great questions. And I wish you the best of luck this year.